I can't believe that in just the span of a decade, the Hyundai Sonata has transformed itself from a cheap D-segment alternative that taxi companies used to buy in fleets to something this wonderful, this wholesome package that you see right next to me. Now, granted, 10 years is a lot of time for Hyundai to improve on the Sonata, and perhaps the naysayers haven't quite caught up to the speed with which Hyundai has developed and improved the Sonata. I admit, it is quite a double-edged sword, but Hyundai no longer wants to position itself as the value pick, but rather it wants to be on the same level of parity as its Japanese rivals and even some European brands. So let us take a look at the new 8th generation Hyundai Sonata. The D-segment market is dying, no thanks to SUVs. The fact that most of them teeter around the 200,000 ringgit mark doesn't help either, and objectively, it makes the Sonata a lot less appealing, or so it seems. For this review, I feel like doing something different because I want to open some eyes, soften some hearts, and dispel some myths that you might have for Korean cars. Design-wise, I'm still trying to get used to sensuous sportiness. For some reason, it doesn't quite strike a chord with me as much as it does with some of my friends and neighbors, but I have to admit, it does look particularly fetching at different angles and certain lighting conditions. I love what they did with the daytime running lights. It's actually this big piece here, like an arrow shape kind of thing, but this particular strip disguises itself as a chrome strip when it's not lit. So I think that is a wonderful sort of manufacturing touch. So this is really nice. What I also like is the really strong shoulder line, the knurled effect on the wheel cap, as well as the fastback silhouette. There is also a lot of emphasis on aerodynamics evidenced by the actual air curtain here and an underbody tray. So all this, they combine to make a slightly quieter cabin. While I still haven't come to terms with the exterior design, the cabin, however, I am a massive fan of. Like I said in the walk around video, this cabin is easily the nicest one that I've seen in a D-segment sedan, at least this class, and one of the best I've seen all year actually. This dual-tone tan and black cabin looks the business. It doesn't just look good, the surfaces actually feel incredibly good to the touch as well. The build quality here is almost as good as the Lexus ES, with generous use of soft plastics and high-quality leather. Why can't more car manufacturers offer this two-tone layout? I mean, it looks good, isn't it? Oh wait, it's not their fault that Malaysians are a boring bunch. I mean, come on guys, honestly speaking, two-tone interiors ain't half bad. Just what are you afraid of? It being dirty? Come on. Jokes aside, the seats are actually quite comfy, you know, par for the course. And just don't be fooled by the perforations that you see on the leather because there's no ventilation or heating function. Those have been omitted. I like the huge panoramic glass roof also. It opens and closes fairly quickly. I don't know why, but I find that kind of brilliant actually. It's nice not to wait so long for it to open. But anyway, I digress. As nice as things are, there are a few things about the cabin that I don't quite like or I find not up to standards, such as the heads-up display. The text is a little bit blurry, like it's off focus, not sharp. Maybe it's a calibration thing, but it's okay, it's quite legible. It's just that it's not as sharp as I like it to be. And also this head unit over here, this is a smaller 8-inch display. It's not the full 10.25-inch display that you get in other markets, which comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This unfortunately uses a wired connection via this USB-A here, and aren't most devices these days, don't they come with a USB Type-C port or cable? I don't see any Type-C ports in this car. The Passat has it, but not this car. I mean, don't Hyundai and Samsung come from the same country? I don't know, I just don't see any USB-C ports here. Yeah. Anyway, it's not all doom and gloom. The head unit is actually pretty darn responsive. I like it. And in terms of rating, I would put this right behind the Volkswagen Passat, which leads the whole head unit game by a country mile. So this is in number 2, so it's not so bad. Plus the 6, I actually don't know how many speaker counts, maybe 8. Hyundai doesn't list it officially, but they are not branded. But having said that, they actually sound pretty decent, much better than the Accord's 10 speaker sound system thing. At the back, I find the seats to be among the best in terms of sheer comfort. I also like the way they look, they feel to the touch, the padding is great, and there is a lot of leg room. Actually, this is my driving position, and that's only a little bit smaller than the Accord and the Passat, but still fantastic for a D-segment car. The only thing I wish it had is the power adjustability control for the front passenger seat, because if you were to be shuffled around, you want to sit here, you still have to manually move the front seats if you want more space. You can have that in the Camry and the Accord, but not here. Just keep that in mind. Other things it doesn't have are sun blinds, so the Camry still is uncontested, and like the Accord, you don't have power sun blinds at the back, but you know, the third brake light is still up there, so still premium looking. Other things I have to point out are air vents. These are not as powerful as the front ones, which is surprising because the new Elantra, the draft is just as strong as the front ones, and there are none in the B pillars. And again, you have one USB Type A charging port down here, no Type C. You can fit 3 adults here pretty comfortably, and while the boot space is not the biggest in class, its 510 liters of space is actually pretty respectable. There is no spare tire though. Another feature I really like about the Sonata is the smart trunk release. So if I do this, yeah, you gotta stay there for like 3 seconds, and it works almost all the time. Yeah, so some people might prefer this over the foot swiping gesture system, but I personally think this works most of the time for me, and it's actually not new. It's been around since the Sonata LF time, like 5 years ago. And for those of you who have used or experienced this feature, let us know if you prefer this or the foot swiping gesture system. I think both are fine, they work equally as well, and it's nice. If I can put it simply, the Sonata is actually quite a well-rounded car. Its 2.5 litre MPI engine doesn't feel lethargic. In fact, it's quite well-spirited and eager to rev, and it will happily go past 6,000 RPM on a normal basis. So getting up to speed is actually quite easy, and it does so very smoothly. Smooth is the operative word here. All that 180 PS and 232 Newton meters of torque gets sent to the front wheels via a silky smooth 6-speed automatic gearbox. Gear shifts are smooth, and you barely feel it working when you're driving normally like I am right now. It's very non-intrusive like a proper CVT, except this transmission is properly stepped. And I think this is a wonderful 6-speed gearbox. In fact, I'd rate it as good as the Camry, if not even better, in terms of just smooth shifting action. Obviously, there's no Tiptronic function, because instead of a traditional gated shifter, you get this shift-by-wire 4-button drive selector thing over here. But you do get to change gears using the pedal shifters, although I don't find them to be particularly useful, because like even in sport mode, and then you manually go through the gears, as soon as the car detects that you're not actually sustaining that spirited drive mode, it's gonna revert back to D. There is no way to override that. It just does that on its own. So I find that to be a bit annoying. But you know, it's not a driver's car. So, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because not all cars are meant to drive like the Volkswagen Passat or the Mazda 6. And Hyundai knows that. So what they've done here is that they made the Sonata a little bit more comfortable, actually a lot more comfortable, and just easy to drive. You know, it's just a comfortable place to be in. Speaking of which, ride comfort in this car is actually pretty incredible. The last time I was this impressed with Hyundai's suspension tuning was with the Tucson, but this is several levels beyond that. Primary and secondary ride is great. The suspension is far from crushy, even on poorly surfaced roads. I mean, if driven at reasonable speeds, of course, and it's just excellent. It feels quite a bit more sophisticated than the Accord, almost Conti levels here. So it's quite easy to drive on the highways too, because there's quite a bit of play in the steering wheel, and by that I mean it's quite dead off center. So what you can do is twitch the steering wheel like this, and the car is not going to react too aggressively to those inputs. And just by me doing this, you can already imagine how comfortable your passengers would feel, right? I mean, you don't even feel it from driving just behind the wheel like this. So it's going to be even better for your passengers. The downside to that is there is not much feedback from the steering wheel, so it's quite dead a little bit. But that's not a bad thing, because the Sonata is meant to be an easy car to drive, more so after a long day's work. I think apart from their N performance cars like the i30N that I reviewed earlier in the year, that had great steering feedback. This one is the opposite of that. In the corners, the Sonata is surprisingly competent. I wouldn't say that it's on par with the Passat or the Honda Accord, because when you start pushing it to the limits, you actually feel the weight moving to the outer side of the wheel. But from what I can tell after driving it for a few days, the car feels more matured, more hunkered down, more poised than ever before. And it feels like it's deliberately engineered for ride quality, and I love that about it. It's that focus that they have, and they've nailed it. And it really translates very well into, everyday practical use. NVH is also great. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, the whole aerodynamic thing, it cuts down wind noise, and you can hear all these cars go by, these motorbikes. It's fairly quiet, isn't it? But the downside, I think, to having such a quiet cabin is that you cannot escape from the laws of physics. So when you remove wind noise and you remove engine noise, the engine is so refined here. What do you get? Tire roar. But that's just the way it is. It's not bad, it's just that it's more audible than the other two. But just in terms of refinement, I think it is best in class. Truthfully, the Hyundai Sonata is a mighty impressive car, at least so far. For around 190,000 ringgit, I think it has the chops to take on key rivals, because its strongest suits are build quality and ride comfort, and it has those in spades. However, there is one big downside, and that is the lack of Hyundai Smart Sense. So you don't get features like autonomous emergency braking, nor adaptive cruise control. There is passive cruise control, but there is also no lane centering assist and the like. So unfortunately, it has to skip out on these systems. But at least there's 6 airbags, there's that smart camera system, and you also get like 2 ISOFIX mounting points for child seats at the back. If you're wondering, how dare Hyundai ask 200,000 ringgit for the Sonata? Well, besides these strong points that I have brought up earlier in this video, or actually throughout this video, also consider the fact that this car is fully imported from South Korea, and typically with CBU cars, it suffers from 2 things: taxation as well as weak foreign exchange. And the same applies to CBU Mazda cars, CBU Toyota cars, as well as Lexus cars. That's why they are so expensive. I'll leave you with this. 10 years ago, the Hyundai that you knew to offer value for money cars that are loaded with features and equipment, well, that is no more. That was its turning point to convince people that it can offer more things for the same money as its Japanese rivals. As of 2020, Hyundai is now ranked the 5th largest car brand in the world, ahead of Audi, Nissan, and Mazda. In fact, the Hyundai Kia group is now bigger globally than Honda, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, and PSA Group. So if they asked you to spend 200,000 ringgit for the Sonata, I think it is pretty justifiable. Right now, the only question that remains is that if you're willing to get past the whole badge knobbery thing and go test drive this car for yourself, because I think it is a fantastic option when you compare it against its, D-segment competitors. Truly. And I mean that very, very honestly. So I guess that is it for my brief review of the Hyundai Sonata. Let us know what you think of the car in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care and bye-bye.